Good morning. The Committee on Youth Development will now convene this roundtable at 10:07 in the morning. I'd like to thank my colleagues who are present here, Senator Meritorious, the Vice Chair of the Committee, Senator Jim Espadon, and Senator Nicolas Underwood. Thank you for joining me this morning. We've convened this roundtable to follow up on an initial roundtable we've had several months ago concerning the issue of child homelessness here on Guam. And we wanted to bring the stakeholders back to the table because I understand that there's going to be some new activity in terms of getting a new handle on our accounts on the island, as well as some updates on various agencies that have been looking at the situation from a solutions point of view. And so I wanted to make sure that we stayed on the issue and we continue to dialogue about it so that we can eventually begin moving ourselves towards a comprehensive solution to address specifically child homelessness here on Guam. So let's go ahead and begin by introducing ourselves so that everybody knows who's at the table. I'm Senator Nicolas. I'm the chair of the committee. To my immediate left is Senator Meritorious. To her immediate left is Senator Jim Espadon, and to his immediate left is Senator Nicolas Underwood. And if we can just go ahead and begin and go around the table with everybody making introductions, your name, and the agencies to which you are associated.
Thank you. Margaret Hattori, University of Guam School of Nursing and Health Science, and also the chair of the Guam Homeless Coalition.
Benny Pinalo, Deputy Director with Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center.
Ellen Polino with Department of Public Health and Social Services, Guam Launch.
Hafaday, I'm Terry Egan, Department of Public Health, Project Carinu, Project Launch.
I'm Linda Rodriguez, and I'm with Public Health and Social Services. I'm the administrator for the Bureau of Social Services Administration.
Kimberly Conrad, I'm the lead social worker with the Family Service Center, the Salvation Army. We do the Rapid Rehousing Homeless Prevention Program.
I do understand that we have had confirmed a representative from the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. They're a key player in these conversations. We've also reached out to the Guam Housing Corporation, and I've had a private meeting with them as well. They do have some ideas that they're turning around on their end. But while we hopefully await their attendance here at this roundtable, if we can go ahead and begin Satori with the Guam Homeless Coalition's upcoming efforts with respect to the homeless counts.
Okay, tomorrow's Friday, right? Yeah. Sorry. It's been a busy month. Tomorrow actually is the annual point-in-time homeless count. Now, HUD requires a count every odd year, but on Guam we've been doing the count every year since about 2010. And actually, many of these individuals are volunteering for the count as well. So we're very fortunate that we have about 42 teams and very seasoned volunteers that are willing to help us. So we've found earlier this month we went out and we've been, thanks to the media, we've been getting reports of where new homeless sites may be, such as abandoned buildings. I mean, you're very familiar with the Hagatna situation, and where some unconfirmed reports about possible youth homeless. We have not to date found an unaccompanied minor during any of our counts. So we're just not really sure if that's due to a lack of being able to find them. It's also always on a school day. So, sometimes they will go to school, and then, so we're just not sure. And maybe perhaps these individuals know better. So we're hoping that through the count we'll be able to get a better feel for it. But we also, as you're aware from the last roundtable, we will be spending a lot of time in the areas with inadequate housing. Our concern since Typhoon Dolphin and talking to the mayors is that perhaps some of these people who already had very inadequate housing, that this situation was made worse by Dolphin. We went a couple weeks ago with the mayor's staff in Dedido to a family that has 23 individuals. It's actually 3 different families living under one roof. But since Dolphin, the roof, the tin roof, has been torn off, and it's primarily children. So as we mentioned before, the villages that have higher numbers, such as Jigo and Dedido, tend to be populated with families with children. And so I know that's a big focus of all of you and for us as well. And so hopefully tomorrow we'll get a better idea. We just hope for good weather and safety for our volunteers.
Just roughly, I remember that the data on the last count was about 400 youths that were identified more or less to be considered homeless in about 160 families. That was the previous count. Are you guys going to be counting the exact same way this year so that we can have a year-over-year?
Yes. The last couple years, we have been separating out the families in living on the street. So definitely the street homeless are separated in our data collection from those living in substandard housing. So we would be able to tell you, of those in substandard houses, how many are families, what's the family size, how many children, and the ages. And then, of course, this year, if we find some minors on the street, which we know actually, we got reports this morning that there are families in tents and on the beach. The last 2 days, we've been getting a lot more calls. And we have seasoned teams actually going to find these families. So we will be able to give you a much more accurate count.
That's great. That's great. That'll give us a real-time picture going into the budget season of what it is that we're dealing with also.
Right, because, the one thing we appreciate with the legislature is that all of you have become quickly more familiar with the situation and then actually understanding the complexity of it. I think at first when the data's read, people think, it's 600 kids on the street. And it tends not to really be the case. But then, these families in really substandard housing do have very important needs. And I know Project Renew and Launch, those are your clients that you serve. And so, when you mention funding, I know a lot of these agencies are, looking for support so that we can target those populations. I know I said this before, sorry, but if we don't help those youth and the children, this cycle of homelessness will not end on the island. And so that's very important. Important point to make is GDOE has been an excellent partner for the last 2 years. We love the superintendent. He sent truant officers and then the parent family community outreach, PF COP. Large numbers of them are volunteering for the second year in a row, and they are actually members of the coalition. They gave us food commodities that will really help the families. We've got cereal, we've got juice and milk. Those commodities do well for families, whereas the canned goods do better for our street homeless. So we've really seen a lot more outreach and support kind of tailored to meet these different needs, the families versus the street adults. And so we really appreciate all of you because the coalition has felt a lot more support and understanding of the complexity of the situation. I think at first we want to say, okay, let's just build a shelter and that will solve the problem, but it's much more complicated. So we do appreciate you.
Thank you. Did any of my colleagues have any follow-up questions for Ms. Torrey? Not right now. Did any of the other non-governmental service providers or even the government offices have anything they'd like to add to the dialogue at this time?
Sure. I just want to, say a few words that when we say that it is our population with Guam Launch and Project Renew, that you're spot on. That definitely we are concerned about the social, emotional, behavioral development of these young children and what that means to them through their developmental years. And we know that 75 to 85% of a child's brain is developed by the time they're 3 years of age, which means if they experience homelessness, which in many situations is hopelessness, then that's what helps form their biological memory. That's what it becomes integrated into their system and the way that they're raised. And the way that they experience life and their expectation. And we know that too often our homeless population often are less educated, poor incomes, and become more dependent upon the welfare systems instead of contributing to our island. But this is a constant population, not that they come and they go, it's that there is no, by any means, immediate solution. And that by the time we address certain numbers, and whether it's 400 youth and 160 families, in comes the influx of other families, especially from our neighboring islands. So our plan needs to be not only aggressive, but it almost needs to be long-term and sustained to some level, because this is a population that will continue to, I hate to say burden the system, but it definitely is one that we need to continue to address. So I do know that amongst the items that are going to be given out to families that we have, the Renew Launch resource pamphlets inside the bags. And so we've set ourselves up where we are more available in the southern end of the island and central, but that we're also opening up our doors for Guam Launch and Renew up north in February. And so we want to be more accessible to our families. We want to make sure that we provide the services and the referrals that we can. So we're delighted to be here at the table. I'm kind of surprised this room is not, people aren't tripping on each other to come in here, because this is a very hot topic. And this is one that we know that not only Guam, but especially Hawaii and parts of California are really battling around our Pacific Islanders population. So I'm delighted to be here. Let's find some solutions, and let's look at this in a long-term approach.
If I may,
Senator
just
Underwood, yes.
a follow-up. Thank you. Only because I have to step out in a few minutes to perform a wedding. I was curious about the age groups, especially for those who are even preschool, because I do agree with you, Terry, that the sooner that we can provide intervention, especially for our students at risk, the preschoolers, right, that the better off we would, the greater the chances for that child to have a success in school. So I am just curious whether, if you have the numbers of children, of course we have the services for the school age, the kindergarten, and we're piloting the pre-K, the preschool. So for even toddlers up to 3 years old, do you have that? Do you have those numbers?
Yes.
Yes.
This was last year's report. The age breakdown 0 to 5, unsheltered was 196. There were 14 in the shelter. 6 to 10, it's 123. If you add, there were 10 in emergency shelter for ages 6 to 10. So I'm glad you brought that up, and Terry's right. One thing I forgot to add that we're doing different this year is the coalitions worked very hard with Public Health and our other partners to develop a universal referral form. In fact, Public Health has one, and DOE has one. And so through their example, we've been able to modify a universal referral form so that on the day of the count, the form is confidential, right? We don't ask our homeless individuals for their names. However, if they would like a referral, we have a mechanism now that the surveyors can actually get their information, name, phone number, and find out where we can make the referral. Last year, we were very successful with West Care and with the other VA services. When we found a vet, for instance, in Hagåtña, we would call home base, and then West Care would send someone out. And so we're very happy. So we've really expanded that, and Carino's been great and launched to give us the brochures. And they even did some presentations to the surveyors. And so the referral form this year actually, and the great thing is with the referral form, we can now say, okay, on this day of the count, we reach out to how many families and what the needs were. Now keep in mind, I'm glad Mr. Duenas is here from GER. Keep in mind, HUD's requirement for the count is simply gathering data. So it has been a struggle, and we have been criticized for focusing on only collecting data. We have always tried to make referrals. We always do CPS, APS, but it is a struggle to balance that on that day, getting all the data for the whole island, and also making referrals at the same time. So we increased the training. We're really hopeful and very positive that this referral form will be successful. And I mean, even if we can reach out to a few families, whoever we can reach out to and make a difference on that day, I think then it will be a win-win situation. But we'll keep you posted on the success of that.
So you do disseminate information then to the families that you count?
Yes, exactly. And we also have the NENI directory that we are also including in the packet. We have the Circle of Care that has always been given out, but this year we've expanded. And the Circle of Care will also include things like substance abuse programs, Salvation Army, the shelters. On that day, there are some individuals that are not ready to be helped. And they may be offended when we ask, can we fill out a referral form? But we have found that maybe 2 or 3 years later, they see us once a year, and at other events that we've had. We have had some families that will say after a year, 2 years, okay, I'm ready. Can you help me? So we will leave that information in the home. But that's a change. So, let's cross our fingers that it works. And our partners have been great to give us their brochures and supply us what we need to leave with the families.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Underwood. Any other of the service providers wanted to add to the conversation at this time? Sure, Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim Conrad. I'm with the Family Service Center of the Salvation Army, and I'm under the ESG, the Rapid Rehousing Homeless Prevention. I've been there a year. Before that, I worked with West Cara, a Sagan mommy, and I worked with the adult homeless. I can just, without giving you numbers, but I can tell you just in the last 4 months, just by pattern, I know what to expect when we open up. In the last 3 to 4 months, when we open our door, there are literally at least 10 people. It never, I mean, the number, it just keeps, before it would be 2 or 3, and now it's increasing. And I'm not sure what happened in the last 3 to 4 months to cause this. But yes, we have an explosion right now. I don't want to call it, okay, it's a little drastic. We have an increase, very noticeable. And the thing is, I'm just going to throw this out there. I say this all the time. When somebody comes into our program, when we have a family, we really, yes, we provide them housing. Yes, we can refer them to services. But what we really need to do, and what we're trying to do, is empower these families, these parents, to be successful. And in turn, their children will model the parents' behavior of success. And success could be full-time job, or just being a great parent, or you don't have to be rich to be successful. And that's our theory there. We're like, we know if we can empower this set of parents right now, then the next generation is going to be a little bit better. And that's what we have to do. We need to get proactive and not so much reactive. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Normally I don't. All right, I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. So one of the things that we've tried to do at this juncture is, we know that the homeless situation is a very large problem. But we're trying to zero in specifically on the issue of child homelessness. Part of the reason why is because of this whole conversation of breaking that cycle and trying to at least make sure that we're not having a generational problem compounding on top of the ordinary homeless numbers that find their way into our community. So in our last roundtable discussion, we did have some input, very valuable input from some of the service providers at the agencies, and I'm very grateful that you're able to join us here this morning. I did have a private meeting as well with particularly Mr. Benivetti and his team of the Guam Housing Corporation, and at this time I'd like to invite them to go ahead and contribute to the conversation in terms of what our agency responses look like in terms of being able to address these 160 families, or whatever the new count may be, specifically the child homelessness question. So, Martin, please.
Thank you. My name is Martin Benivetti. I'm president of Guam Housing Corporation. I think this is chase of a solution started about 5 years ago when we first got in, and we've been solving the homelessness problem in different levels, and that's the only way we can manage it, is to split them up in different levels. First, of course, are those people that are walking the streets and just have nowhere to go. Then we go up another step, and that's the young couples and young people who are starting off in life. We try to provide them with a program that gets them into a new house, or to buy a refurbished house. Over the last 4 or so years, the down payment assistance program, we're almost at the 400 number, where we've helped 400 families, new families. These are people who just get married, they have their first and second child already, trying to get out of that, the mothers or fathers, sharing their houses. They finally managed to be both wage earners, and they qualify for a certain amount of money to buy a home. Programs like that, the down payment assistance program, the other loan packages that we develop at Guam Housing, and the governor is leading us into another program that I apologize, Mike and I had previous engagements. We're trying to remodel some homes so that we can provide overnight stay for people that are homeless instead of sleeping in the streets. We've been able to pull people out of bus shelters and beach huts and stuff like that, and put them in some of our empty units up at Lada. Some of them become successful and they find a way to get a more permanent solution, and we've helped them with that. Some people just didn't know that they could afford some of these housing developments. And just to summarize, the other thing we're doing is this year is we've asked a few contractors to come in and help us develop homes that are starting with less than 100,000. There's one that is almost at its completion. It's about 1,000 square feet. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a carport, and that's going to start marketing at $98,000. So we're trying to get people to qualify for these with these homes. Most of the people we've helped in the past are people that qualify for 150,000 and above, but we've turned our direction to go a little bit further down. The problem we have now, and I've shared this with a lot of these senators already, is that our funds are depleted. Our down payment assistance program funds depleted. Our loan funds to help package different amount of loans for different people is depleted. We can still do a few more, but we're not ready to even start marketing these alternative building systems. We can build a home better than a bus shelter with walls and everything, with all the facilities inside, for roughly about $15,000. These are new types of homes that are being offered out there. Metal homes, or there's a combination of styrofoam, concrete homes. You've seen the little home that sits on top of the hill here in Mighty, on top of a house. That's been there for years. And those are not expensive at all. We're looking at container homes, not as pleasing to look at, but it's very livable. And a lot of the people we helped during the storm are still out there. They're still in the same situation, except one thing better is that we've managed to give them a small canopy to live out of for now. So we have our job cut out for us, but now that senators, you're bringing this to light, I hope that you look at it. We've offered a solution already through the Housing Trust Fund. This legislature has created the Housing Trust Fund in 2012, but we didn't fund it. We have the rules and regulations already sent in. It should be arriving here at the legislature not too long from now. We need to approve that, and then we need to look at the funding source that we've suggested and put some money into that Housing Trust Fund so we could tackle all of this. And in one of the approaches we're trying to do is we're trying to mimic Mike's federal program called Section 8, because not everybody can qualify for Mike's Section 8, Gura Section 8. Sorry, Mike. but Mike and I work very closely. We do things together, and sometimes half and half, or sometimes he pays in more. But we've managed to start off with taking the teachers' housing that was falling apart for almost 30 years. It hadn't been used out there. Gura has managed to put funds in there and refurbish these units. We took 10 units in Sagan de Lasan. This is across the street from Estumbo Elementary School. We refurbished those units, and now we're renting those units out for a smaller price. The legislature just returned a lot of these properties back to Chamorro Land Trust. These are properties where they have concrete homes that were there before. It can be refurbished again. We're looking into getting a lot more than what we got the last time. The last time was 10. Maybe we could pick up. I know there's at least 7 of them standing with nobody owns it anymore, and we can refurbish things like that. It's just that at this point our funds are just down to, and whatever Mike has, we're also asking him to commit it to help us with this homeless problem. And I know we can tackle it, but now's the time to. I know that all of you have a copy of the trust fund funding bill. It just needs to be introduced, and maybe we can get somewhere. So I'm hoping that we can do that, because I think that's going to be the solution. We can help homeless people, families, with kids, without kids, at different levels, starting with the people that are in the bus shelters. Then we'll go up to the people that can buy homes. Now we can sell them homes for $15,000 to $98,000 for a solid concrete home. It's very sellable. I mean, those things they're ready. We'll be opening that package in a few months when the other contractors finish with their model homes too. So I think in a nutshell, that's where Guam Housing is looking to help solve this problem. We've done some tiny programs here. We took a homeless from Paseo, took him up to Dededo and put him in a house for a while. We've done things like that, but now we're looking at finding ways to help them solve the other problems that cause them to be homeless. So it needs to be a combination of all of that put together, all of our groups put together, whatever Salvation Army can help with, whatever the other groups, West Care and the others can come up with, put it into one plan. Because I think in Texas they were saying that was the problem before, is everybody said, well, we feed the homeless and we've done our job, and it ends there for them. But what we're saying is that start with that and then help us do other things in the homeless community, so we can solve it with one group working different, Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So you spoke a bit about some of the permanent solutions that we have out there on the table. I know that when Mike was here too last time, he talked about another voucher solution that maybe he can probably elaborate on after our last meeting. But I wanted to kind of capture the three things that we wanted to kind of target with this effort. And the first is we want to pursue the shortest distance from street to shelter at the lowest cost and highest volume. So we want to get people off the streets and into a shelter with as much cost management as possible, and as many of them as possible. That's the first target. The second target is we want to zero in on the child homelessness situation, because when we keep it too overly expansive, it becomes one of those things where we just don't feel like we're making the progress we need to address the issue. And the third thing that I remember talking about in our last roundtable was discussing and considering whether or not a roof-first policy is what we should all be pursuing. Because we always talk, all of us as different groups talk about how we try to do something comprehensive. But what happens is that our comprehensive efforts first of all, they get diluted because we're all trying to do something comprehensive, so we're not able to fix on a large scale the initial problem, which is the sheltering. And then as everybody's trying to all do something comprehensive, we just have so many different programs that are overlapping and not concentrating on maybe specializing on what everybody might be able to do best at the table. So if we pursue a roof-first policy at the government side, where our role is to find out the least expensive, quickest way to get people, particularly the children, into shelters, that's what we can concentrate on. And then these other agencies and service providers can concentrate on providing the services necessary to help them develop the habits and the living practices that'll keep them out of homelessness and teach their children to not repeat the same errors. So that's kind of what we've been talking about. I did appreciate our conversation about the Housing Trust Fund. I know that some of my colleagues will be pulling that back up again and taking a closer look at it, because you do identify a funding source there. And what we need to do now, at least on the government side, is review that opportunity with whatever opportunity GURA might be able to also bring to the table, so we can determine what will be the most cost-effective for us to consider going into our next budget cycle. So,
can I just add one more thing? When you said most cost-effective, that's having something where you don't need to worry about putting in new infrastructure and stuff like that. So the other day I was looking at with my staff at an abandoned apartment complex, which is about 12 units, and it's going to take some renovation, but those are the fastest ways to accommodate some of these families is get ready some of these units that are just sitting out there right now, and they've got infrastructure, they've got the solid structure itself. It's just need to put new windows, new doors maybe, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of vacant houses out there, vacant single standing houses. They have vacant units that just need to be repaired a little bit. We're doing that now with our own ladder. We're trying to find different funds to renovate them and offer some kind of a housing homeless program temporarily until we can get other things up.
Okay. Okay.
Sir, can I just- I'm so sorry. I know, I'm so sorry.
Sure. No, anytime. It's a round table.
Okay, so this is my social work dream. I work really, we're funded by GURA, and we, God bless them, here's my challenge. Now, we work hand in hand with Guam San Jose. So if somebody is able to get into the shelter for 60 days, we can work with them to have them, the day they exit, they go right into their new home. The problem that I encounter is when they are street homeless and they go in and there's no room, and that's no fault of theirs. Space is limited and the 24-hour spot is taken. If we had some kind of system to just a week hotel voucher, because honestly, under our program, if an agency is working with the family and we can get people in a house within, my record is 1 day. But we can get them in. But we just need for that gap. When the shelter is full and the intake process for us, that is the window where we need someplace, an emergency situation to put these families. Did I say it right? Okay, that's all.
Well, I just wanted to follow up then with a question. So if you needed some kind of bridge sheltering to give you guys the opportunity to place somebody who needed placement, what kind of time, how long, what's your average bridge time that you need? Because that way when we begin considering possible solutions, we know what to ask for.
We could also run out of money. I'm really good at spending it. If a family goes to Guam San Jose or a family goes to any of these agencies and said, I went to Guam San Jose, I can't get in the shelter. If the agency can help them get their documents, we have landlords that will we can do an inspection. We have very nice landlords who are very, very, they want to help and they're happy to work with us and our families, and we could do it within a week. If we had everything on a Monday, we could have them housed by Friday.
So 5 working days?
Don't quote me on that. I don't know who's reporting.
I mean, something for us to work with. So 5 working days is enough to...
So if they come in and we have a document checklist, if they get all of their documents, we can literally reach out to our landlords. And CoreTech is one of the landlords we work with. We work with any landlord, but CoreTech is amazing. Ironwood Estates, Guam Housing Corporation, a couple of private landlords. They all are good about helping. And if I call them and I'm like, can you do a lease signing tomorrow? And they're like, yes, Kim, I'm happy to help you. But we just need that little short gap. And I just recently reached out to your office because one of my fears is when I run into these situations where I need time to get them, there's no room in the shelter, is having these single moms with their young kids on the street, or even a young family, or I don't want to come back to work the next day and have the nightmare of something happening to somebody because, and again, this is, all the agencies are incredible. We're just kind of limited. Money. Okay, bye.
Right. Mike.
Good morning, Senators Nicolas and Senator Torres and Senator Espaldon. Are we taping this, or do I have to?
Yes, we are
okay.
live.
Well, let me introduce myself. I am Mike Duenas. I'm the Executive Director for GURA. Thank you for having this roundtable discussion. It adds an additional venue to some of the ongoing discussions we've had over the last 2 or 3 years, and one that I believe provides a little bit more visibility for the community to allow us to educate the community on just the complexity of the issue of homelessness. I want to thank the Guam Homeless Coalition for all the efforts they've been striving to enhance the homeless count, but not only just enhancing the homeless count, because when we get the documents, everyone's going to ask us or have asked us, well, now what? What do we do with that? And that's a discussion that started a couple of years ago, and you see some of the results. There's more reaching out to what we call mainstream service providers and nonprofits in an effort to try and provide a more cohesive or comprehensive approach to helping these families, as opposed to just, well, have you gone to these agencies and give them a list of agencies? And so the concept of a universal referral system is something that I see slowly evolving, and that's a positive. We've at GURA, we've pretty much maxed out all the federal funds we have to assist or to provide housing to individuals. Our Section 8 wait list, we're continuing to pull off the wait list, but we are not accepting any new applications. Our public housing programs, we continue to, as the units become vacant, we continue to make every effort to turn those units around so we can rent it out as quickly as possible. We have over $1 million, actually about $1.5 million now from HUD for homeless programs. And as you've heard from Kim, Salvation Army and some of our other partners are really making a diligent effort to ensure that they really squeeze out every penny they can out of these grants. So it comes down to what other resources can our community bring to the table. And every now and then you'll hear stories, anecdotal stories of church groups or just civic organizations, some military groups reaching out and helping one or two families every now and then. And that's also part of the resources I think we have to look at is what can we do to help families, to help their relatives get off the streets. It's a difficult approach, but that's also one of the things we're doing. Now, you've mentioned the roof first policy, and we are looking at that. The majority of the $1.5 million that we pour into the homeless are targeted to individuals with chronic mental illness or substance abuse issues. And we are now looking at how we can fashion our new proposed use of grant funds moving forward to try and earmark programs for families with children. At this point, we're also looking at implementing what we call a housing first solution or roof first solution, as you mentioned. The challenge has been finding not only finding other resources that we can use to help the family pay the rent. One alternative is to see if we can develop a Section 8, a voucher that looks like Section 8, but has a fewer restrictions that we can work with private landlords. The other alternative we're looking at now, working with Guam Housing Corporation, is we're looking at what we can do to help them turn their units around. Their units are over 40 years old, and some of them are in disrepair. And it would cost a little bit more money to renovate than their cash flow allows. So we're looking at what we can do to find resources to renovate those units so that is something that they can make available. We're actually looking at something more like a project-based voucher approach for some of the more difficult cases. Families with children that for the most part have no other issues other than lack of employment would do well, and I guess something we can put it into the private housing market. But when we started looking at some of the other causes for homelessness, we're looking at something a little bit more, say, a project-based version of Housing First, where we target the assistance to these individuals at a particular site where case management and other support services can be more easily provided to these individuals. Again, other than that, we've looked at the Housing Trust Fund as an alternate source. one possible source of funding for these programs. We continue to look for what other programs are available from the federal government, but at this point, we're using everything we have as efficiently as we can.
Well, it looks like everybody has a whole lot of moving parts that they're having in play.
It is very a complex situation, and as new organizations step up or existing organizations to extend their capabilities, you see some organizations are stepping back because they just don't have the resources anymore.
I think part of what is coming to us at this juncture is we're going to have to start making the policy choices on how to identify the resources necessary to support the programs and to provide the solutions. Where I'm kind of at is, of course, it's going to be a challenge to find resources in a limited resource environment. But when we do identify resources, how do we best deploy it? And what will get us, again, that shortest distance from street to shelter at the lowest cost and highest volume. And that's, I think, where we need to kind of identify that fine line where the dollar is best spent on this program to achieve this outcome. And I think that if we can align those things, we'll begin to see a meaningful and very direct return on investment with that kind of approach.
Yes,
so we'll need to continue to work closely together, because it sounds like we have different avenues to move forward, but we need to figure out which is the best one to deploy the resources that we have available.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to, commend Mike Duenas and, of course, Martin Benivetti for all their hard work and what they've been doing to address the homelessness issues here on Guam. But part of the issues that we also need to take a look at is the barriers to affordable housing. Okay, the barriers to affordable housing. Now, what are some of the barriers that are we looking at? Well, the cost of construction, the cost for hooking up water, power, sewer. Those things, the legislature can definitely come into play right away. This is a short distance, a very short throw of the football, per se. You guys can help reduce the cost of affordable housing, remove some of those barriers. What's another barrier? Insurance. There are mobile homes all over the United States, and with today's constructions, they would probably do very well here on Guam. For typhoons and our climate here, and they're not as expensive to construct. They're prefab, and they can be shipped here quite easily. We need to increase the inventory of housing. Now, what's holding them back is the insurers here on Guam won't insure them. Now, if we can get the legislature to work with the insurance companies and help insure these mobile homes, we can put mobile homes in play right now, and people can afford those. They're less expensive than a Lexus. And we could populate this whole island with affordable housing. But we need to look at the barriers to affordable housing. That's the number one issue. If you want to increase inventory, you're going to have to put more inventory into play. And we're going to have to look at comprehensively. Other things too that we need to maybe address is how we manage our properties here in Guam. We don't, by law, cannot build to our zero land lot. So that means if you're on a property, you have one home and you've got a big space, but you can't build to that end of that space of your property. Well, what would happen if you could put another single one-bedroom home on your property? And if we allowed landowners to do that? Again, that would help increase inventory. So you might want to take a look at doing that. We used to, many years ago when I was growing up, when Nana was getting old, we built a little tin house or, a little structure, and she stayed on our property. We can no longer do that. But if the government of Guam allows it by law, people can build to their zero land lot, you would increase inventory. Anyways, those are just some of the issues that I think, again, echoing Martin and Mike's points. My position would be to look at what we internally can do to remove some of those barriers to affordable housing.
Thank you. That's a good contribution to the conversation. I do share some of your points. My office has been actually looking at different ways for us to be able to address the systems development charge, that really impacts the ability for new homes to come up, because it just adds on as much as 10 or 20% to the cost, that alone. And then also to the property and casualty insurance requirements. That's actually something that's been on the minds of a lot of our realtors as well, because the property casualty insurance requirements, and particularly the requirements of the federal lending agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, for typhoon coverage for homes that are built, to withstand typhoons that the earth hasn't even seen yet. And yet they require us to have the same standard of coverage as a home in California that's built, with materials that wouldn't withstand a storm that's a quarter of the strength that we get on average. So those are definitely two areas as well that we've been looking at. But you do bring up a very good point where we need to also begin approaching the solution to the problem from a tiered perspective, where we have those who are in poverty who will never buy a home, even if we're able to reduce the cost of one. And then we have those who are just that far away from being able to get on their own 2 feet, if they could just get a little bit more help. That's, I think, where Guam Housing Corporation has also been able to help fill the gap. So
There's going to be renters.
if you can.
There will be renters, people who can't afford to buy a house for a long time. We're developing those areas too, and Mike, through his tax breaks, have encouraged in the last few years the building of several hundred units that are, affordable. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we went to the next step, and we did Lada Estate, or what was Lada Estate, and converted it into a senior home, and that's become very affordable because of Mike's, tax breaks that he gives to these people through the federal. But those little things are good, and I've tried to conquer this systems development charge. I have a petition in my desk right now that's signed by at least 1,500 people. It's not moving though. But I of course advocate that we remove that. There's no sense to give somebody a down payment assistance of $5,000, then you hit them in the end for $8,000 to $10,000 for water connection and sewer. It's just kind of, and they've made, I think through the legislature, they made some amendments to that made it softer. But I'm still for the total elimination if I can get it, because it still hinders one way or the other.
Well, one of the things we're looking at in my office is we acknowledge the utilities need to be able to mitigate the impact of new demand on a limited demand system. The question becomes, how do we pay for it? Right now the model that we have is that the person who's impacting that demand has to foot 100% of the cost. But the reality as well is that everyone who's built a home prior to the system development charge is impacting that same system, but they didn't have to pay that cost. So those are things that we need to probably take a closer look at in terms of alternative ways.
And the new homeowners become customers for GWA anyway, so they're income producing. Whatever they do will end up getting more customers to pay.
Right.
So there's a wash there somewhere, I think, but if we're talking about affordable homes, then something has to be done at that level, because it's just not helping.
Right.
But I agree. I've been yakking about that for quite some time, just to try and remove that.
And what's very interesting about this conversation is we can see that just as there's so many variables that lead to homelessness, there's also so many variables that lead to the unavailability of homes. And so what we need to begin doing is just narrowing down our scope and our solutions so that we're able to target not only a specific population in terms of children, but a specific solution in terms of exactly how are we going to help the most kids with the most affordable and most volume-oriented type of solution, at least in the interim. And then we can begin tweaking all the other variables as we've tackled the bigger, more immediate solutions in front of us. But I think we need to do the work of finding what those best practices are first, so that we can tackle those first.
When it comes to we're talking about homes that might be purchased at $30,000, $35,000. That's cheaper than a Hummer, And they insure Hummers to run around town. They won't insure these homes that are just sitting in one location. So Guam Housing comes in and says, well, maybe we can do self-insurance. If we finance that loan, then we should be able to secure it ourselves and see what we can do. I haven't gone there totally yet, but We've also had meetings with the insurance companies, and they're willing to insure some of these low-cost homes if there's enough to. And I think the attitude is that they want to help out too, but they're just not there yet totally. But I've got commitments from different insurance companies that they would insure meadow homes. We had them come in with the developers and say, we'll insure every home that we build. And so I think they're ready to do it if we're ready to commit to that, we're going to buy their products. And that's what we're trying to do now is through our model home program. Hopefully, we'll try to help them market these tiny homes, the container homes, the metal homes, the styrofoam, concrete homes. Anything that we're producing, I guarantee is a lot better than what a lot of people are living in right now. Canopies and bus shelters and all kinds of stuff. And I like the idea of building behind homes because I know there's some people that are homeless, but they were living with their families. It's just that the family gets so tight in those little Kaiser homes, and after a while they said, you're my favorite cousin, but you've been here 10 years already, and we can't live together like that. But if you allow them to build a house behind the yard and
put a container home in there,
in the backyard, then it'll be good because they don't share together the everyday living, but they can share other things.
And it still maintains the family unit, at all extent possible.
Yeah.
Growing up here on Guam, we all know there was no such thing as homelessness here. Nothing whatsoever. We grew up, there was nobody walking the streets. The families took care of each other. So I think if we maintain those concepts, we can get back to it. But again, we need to look at removing some of those barriers to affordable housing. We can do it. I'm very positive that we can. This has been an issue that we've been talking about for 20 plus years. It's just a matter of moving the ball forward. We know these things that impact people's lives. Part of it is the inventory, affordable homes. When my parents bought a home back in the 1960s, affordable housing was $18,000. $18,000. Today, affordable housing is hovering around $150,000, $200,000. I remember my brother, he was 18 years old, bought his first home, and he was working at Martinez gas station. I don't see a 19-year-old doing that today. We've got to look at ways that we can get back to where we can allow people to pursue those type of homes that will get them there. There's always going to be renters, and there's always going to be people who are starting off in life, but are willing to make the sacrifice. And there are kids that we've processed home loans for, because they have no debt, but they have responsibility, and they've got enough of an income. And if they can do it, we can sure as hell do it for the rest of the island community. Part of our issues are really looking at internal mechanisms that we can change right now. Again, you're looking for the shortest solutions. These are some of the short solutions that we can address. The cost of power hookup, water hookup, sewer hookup. Maybe, we can come to an agreement because Martin's correct. It is a wash. You pay for this $8,000 water hookup, but I'm a customer. I'm going to be your long-term customer. And we can definitely find ways and solutions to address these utilities.
Sure, Senator Torres.
We've been talking a lot about homelessness and home ownership, and somehow we've bled the two. But what I appreciate is the discussion about homelessness, contemplates that there's different levels, from someone who absolutely has no roof over their head, no access to water and power and amenities. But as I was listening to you, Mr. Benivetti, and also Mr. Pinala, about the different challenges that we have, are we also seeing, and perhaps this is to the Salvation Army, are we also seeing a pattern now where homelessness, not home ownership, but homelessness is also affecting the lower middle class families because of their limited buying power right now? I mean, is that also a reality where wage earners who would, under normal circumstances, be stable are unstable nowadays?
Yeah.
Into the microphone, please.
Yes, and here, that's a good example. We have a lot of working, of course, we have an income limit, but back in the summer, we had an influx of people coming in because Department of Education went on break for the summer, so a lot of their aides and some of not teaching assistants, well, they're out of work, so they immediately are getting in danger of being evicted. They're getting eviction letters, and that is a summertime thing. I don't know how that would be addressed, but yeah, I'm seeing a lot of very hard-working individuals, and just the cost of rent here is so prohibited, and especially when we have some new people coming on island and the development. So of course, if you're a landlord and you're like, well, I can get $2,200 a month for this unit, so I'm going to rent it for as much as I possibly can, because there's no incentive for me, unless I'm just a very nice person, to take a lower rent. I would be foolish. So maybe, tell a landlord, hey, if you work with our agencies and you're housing somebody under any of the programs, you can have we'll waive your property taxes. There'll be a benefit for you. There has to be some enticement for that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay.
She's correct, and also nationwide, that we are seeing increase nationwide in homeless families with children, and a lot of it is having to do with that low income end. They are working. I was looking at our number, but it's in a table. This is a graph, so it's it looks like it's close to 25% last year that reported that they actually were employed of our homeless population. And even I usually do the Hagåtña area, and I'm always surprised. I know, especially the first time I counted, that a lot of these individuals actually had a job. It's just that the amount that they earn is you're right, they can't rent, and you can't pay last month's rent. And back then I didn't know a lot about the services available, so it was just surprising. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, but we work very well with Gura. And Amorse, who's always working with us, and she comes to every coalition meeting, she steers us, and she's in charge of actually submitting the grant application. And she's well aware of the various services that the HUD money funds. So our continuum of care, we try to ensure that the providers don't really have a large overlap in what their services are. There's a mechanism in place through the continuum of care where when the grant application comes out, the service providers like Salvation Army, Catholic Social Services, apply for whatever their programs are. And so I know we've been working, and Mr. Duenas can clarify, but we have been working on more of an evaluation type method to ensure that these services do meet the needs of whatever it is they're going to be providing, so we don't see a waste in federal funding or too much of an overlap. And especially in services for the youth, it's very specialized. Services for the elderly, very specialized. And those with substance abuse is very different. The one thing, though, that our Gura person, Amora, wanted me to point out was that we no longer have the transitional housing. And Mr. Duenas knows this a lot better than I do, for the youth. So that is one area where there's a big gap.
And also just something interesting to note, too, that was in the media was that the majority of our homeless population is Chamorro. Right. Just that's clear also.
This year, overall the count, it's still Chamorro. However, in our shelters, it's Chuukese. And to be fair, when you look at the percent of the population, we still do see a large number of the migrants, but definitely, we don't want to lose sight of our local population that are homeless. But yes, last year it was number one.
Right. And I mean, not that it really matters. I mean, homelessness is homelessness, but for us to have an exacerbated homeless problem that is affecting the indigenous of the island, it speaks
Right.
to,
Right.
I mean, not just the need for us to have an agency response, but we also have, the Chamorro Land Trust, and their mandate that's kind of been stymied for the last 2 decades,
Yes.
that we've been finally getting a lot of action on here legislatively. So hopefully these things can start ramping up to begin bringing some of those numbers down.
Right.
I'm sorry,
Thank
Senator
you.
Espadon.
May I just ask a question? Thank you. Margaret, if I could just ask, I did see the article in the press about the homeless count, and I guess the question I have is, out of that total, there was a total number of Chamorros in that count. I think it was 600 something. I guess the question I'm trying to get to is that a count of individuals or a count of families? Because I would imagine that if you had a count of individuals who are homeless and there was a family of 4, again, we're really, perhaps need to really understand whether we're talking about 600 or are we talking about 200 that need to be housed?
Right. No, that's a great question. We count households, but we also count individuals. And in fact, Kimberly's probably laughing. All of us that do the count, the second page of the count, you actually have to go through every household member and ask their ethnicity. So we do report both, but the number in 2015 for Chamorro was 536 out of the 1280 individuals. Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you been able to, from the data that you have, kind of break that down and bring that number down to families?
Yes, but I don't have it.
And out of that 500, are we talking about 200 homes that need, as opposed to we need 500 homes?
Right.
And again, the more realistic count would be we need 150 to 200 homes.
Right. We do look at households, and in 2015, well, I'm sorry, I can find it, but the one I have right in front of me is our households with children.
Okay.
And that was 166 households with children, but the total persons was 910.
Okay.
And yes, our Salvation Army Homeless Management Information System employees, they're great. They can crunch the numbers and we can get that more detailed data. But yes, we do know we are able to get that. But yes, it's individuals and households.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because now when we start talking, because as I'm sitting here listening to the conversations, and again with Gura and Guam Housing is trying to do, and I'm trying to figure out, geez, how are we going to come up with thousands of homes when really maybe we're talking about a lesser percentage of that to really address the situation. So
right.
So when we start talking about the funding sources and whatnot, we'll kind of have a better gauge of really what we're talking about.
Right, exactly. And Senator's right. We talked about this at the last roundtable that, some of these individuals are on their own property. Some are not. We know that. And you're right. The needs are different for those families that are on their own property. But in interviewing, we tend to see that, and actually Carino sees this on launch, that some of these families really are struggling with poverty. So they're land rich but cash poor, right? So that's a big problem. And I really appreciate your understanding that it's so complex. And just to add the whole housing piece, I'm glad you two are in charge of that and not us.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get to Adonis in just a second, but it really begins to start looking clear that while we do need to always address and mitigate the homeless issue, we need to also understand that the greater context of the housing issue is, we tend to pigeonhole housing into something where, how many do we have for renters or whatever, but we don't realize that, this becomes a much bigger case that begins to really overlap into some of the real moral issues of our community, where affordable housing and access to housing and the cost of being able to hook up to water and to power isn't just about keeping the utilities, flush with the cash they need to meet their bond covenants. It's causing people to be homeless. So when we begin to be putting those things in that kind of a context, the solutions that we start coming up with have to become more holistic. It cannot just be limited to, what's good for the agency or what's good for the utility, but how is it all playing together? Because in the end, somebody who's homeless, could be causing damage to utility assets as well. So there's just we begin to see how things become more and more interconnected. But as that becomes more apparent, I think we're going to have to hone in even more so that we don't get lost in trying to address so many things and then losing the impact that we want. The bottom line impact, which is what we've come here today for. So Adonis, I know that you had something to contribute.
Thank you. In the face of much of the things that DYA is going through and having to deal with more kids coming to us because of the recent bomb threats, I was called on the news yesterday, K57, and I just wanted to bring this up. And Doc Rapadas and I were talking about this morning. We were at a case management review, and trying to figure out, why would kids from homes with, if you don't mind me shifting the discussion, from homes with where parents obviously provide and give them stable environment, do things such as this would cost the government more money and what have you, and distract us from what otherwise would be solving bigger problems like homelessness. And I wanted to talk about something that unites us. Obviously, we're united on this issue, but something that could unite families even more. You talked about the moral erosion, if you will, of our homes, the values that we once had, taking care of people and keeping them from homelessness, whether uncle had a mental health issue or maybe even addiction, what have you. And I bring it home to what happens at the kitchen table and whether or not we're gathering around the kitchen table enough. I'm speaking as the director of DYA because many of these kids who do oftentimes come through us because of CPS, PINS issue, and otherwise a very caustic and toxic home environment where you really know we have to almost make them, remove them from their home, in a sense, making them homeless and removing them from an environment where mom and dad really have nothing that they can't give them themselves. And so I wanted to say that it as much as we're talking about home ownership and homelessness and we're looking at increasing quantity, it's the quality that we might miss. And so in the short term, I would say, I know we're after a short-term solution. I think the long-term solution is those family values and what can be born over the table, over food we grow, as opposed to what we buy or what the government subsidizes. And, it's kind of bringing us back to what every great nation, every great people were once, agrarians. Agrarians. We worked the fields together. We sweat together, right? We practiced husbandry. We practiced sharing. And so in that spirit, obviously, that's why we're here in this roundtable. And I wanted to say, we're doing a great work. And I think we really need to hone back in on how do we get families to spend more time together. Okay, we give them a home, all right? We subsidize their power hookup, maybe their home ownership, what have you, right? And so what happens after that? Mom goes, still continues working 2 jobs. Dad might be addicted and locked up, and childs are fending for themselves. Again, latchkey. What did we really solve? Or did we just continue a cycle? So I say, can we take a step back? Okay, let's say we solved all these problems and say, okay, well, what do we know? We knew where we came from, and we obviously can start to see the trajectory of where we're going to. And so I say, let's look to, and all due respect, the humble farmer. Many of our homes, that's where we came from. And how an extended family helped to grow the food as opposed to buying the food, trading it, sharing it. And maybe this is taken away from the discussion, except that sometimes we have to look, okay, we solved the problem. We know we've got addictive substances out there on the street and things that are alluring people to their wants as opposed to their needs. And their real needs are at the core. Having someone to love, to take care of them, to look after them, and to see them through the hardest and roughest of times. And even in the face of the trauma that they've had to experience and try to transition through, what then? Where do they get their purposefulness? Where do they find their fulfillment? And I say it's in the earth. You've got to have a parcel of land for that house to stand on, for your head to rest. And in the morning you rise with the roosters, tend to that little garden you have back there in that lot next to Nana's house or little shack, and work it together so that when the fruits of your labor are born, we return to what obviously is a communal life, a life of fulfillment, a life of real tangibles and values that once we were filled with. And I'm sorry to get off on a platitude here, but it's just, I guess, we see numbers at DYA, obviously, and these numbers are probably skewed because, like I said, we have to remove some of these kids, but we see them declining, and I just wanted to share that with you. The kids that came to us in 2013, there were a total of 15 clients. That actually jumped in 2014 to 20, and the days were in the hundreds that they had to be with us. And then finally in 15, it dropped to 11. So I don't know what we're doing there, but I'd like to think that, again, we are probably putting them back in homes, maybe stabilizing parents and their situations. But again, I understand too, it's how complex it is. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I really think things like that. And I just wanted to at least endorse in the next public hearing and ask my friends to join us. Senator Underwood is going to introduce a bill that helps us stand up what is good money after good numbers, a good return, and that's reducing the recidivism up at DYA and helping literacy be born into homes that are obviously word poor. And so I just like to put that out there and I appreciate your time. By the way, we are really going to be pushing on our community gardens program, and I'd love to see you all there when we expand it into the centers. Farming is close to my heart, and it's really already taken hold on my street with my outer island neighbors. And I think that's going to be a unifying example of what brings people together, is sharing the fruits of their labor again, and not being so compartmentalized or segregated because of the fences between us or the tree line, and maybe return us to what was our island, good island ways and our neighborly ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with all the input that we've had today, I think that an approach that we probably should consider is allowing for all the support agencies to continue operating within the status quo. I mean, we're not going to change up your game plan right in the middle of it all. But what we need to do is we need to come back to the table using the data that we have already on the child homelessness and the families the 160 families. As soon as we get the updated numbers from the currently planned count, then we can get a better idea of where we are in terms of what the immediate need is. And I think that the ones who need to begin coming to the round tables and talking at this juncture, these guys need to continue their work. I think we need to have the housing agencies, and we need to have the realtors, the insurers, the contractors, and the utilities at the table, so that we can begin understanding the framework of the conversation that we just had here today. And when we bring all those groups to the table, we can begin to explore not only what the immediate solution will be for the children, the 400 or whatever the new count will be, and the 160 families, but also put into context the impacts of all of the activities going on in those particular groups as they ultimately are affecting the bottom line homeless numbers. I really think that this has been an eye-opening conversation, because I don't think that each of these groups really understand that the lines do connect, the dots do connect. And so while we allow you guys to continue doing what you do best with what we've already afforded you, we've got to bring these other guys to the table and begin having that conversation. Sure, Martin.
You come up with the next largest population, which is the FAS or FSM people, and we see this when the typhoon occurred and they went into the shelters. It was 90-some% were all Micronesians. So we reached out to the consulate, and they did not respond. Then I also, the leadership of the governor, he allowed me to communicate with the consulate and ask him to sit down with me. To this day, we have not sat down. And the reason why we wanted to sit down, and I proposed in my letter, which we gave a copy to the Department of Interior, is that when the federal government through FEMA said we're not going to help these displaced people because they're not U.S. citizens. That really brought up something else, and says, well, then who does? Who helps these people? Then, I find information that maybe the FAS government and its share of the compact is not really spending that money because there's nobody there anymore. I mean, that's, of course, extreme when I say nobody. But most of the people living in those islands are over here or somewhere else. So I proposed to them that spend some of your money here in Guam so that you take your people out of the Chamorro Land Trust. They're just, crashing the property. And Monty, when he was alive, wanted to move these people out, and we asked it not to do it yet because we don't have an option. So I was asking on behalf of the governor that the FAS government step up and use some of that funds to buy a few acres of property here and build something to catch the overflow. The ones that are not going into Section 8, the ones that are not coming and renting out of Guam housing, the ones that are unable to pay for their own way. We're asking them to come and build something. And I patterned my 4 acres, 5 acres with that 4 towers next to the hospital. That's no more than, I think it's no more than 5 acres, right, Mike? So we're saying 5 acres, buy some property here and build something for your people to sleep in instead of leaving them here to suffer, because they are suffering, a lot of them, and that's where a lot of our problems are at. If you actually remove the Micronesian effect or the FAS or FSM effect from the homelessness, everybody will tell you that we're down to almost zero homelessness. We have our homeless people, but it's something that we can handle. That's why FAS government needs to come in and say something and do something instead of just hiding in the consulate office. And so we're trying again to bring this subject up in the next meeting in Palau. I think the governor wants to bring that up, but it would help if we had the legislature supporting that action so that these people can say, we recognize the problem. When he's asked publicly, he says, I don't even know what the homeless population of the FS citizens is. And so, even if we tell you, what would you do about it? But that's something that's very important, that we apply that pressure to the government, because they're getting funds and they're being given these funds for people that are not there anymore. They're here. So put your money where the problem is what we're saying, and come here and help us out. But we can't give you Chamorro Land Trust property, so you can buy private lands and build something on it. And, there's other small when the typhoon occurred and people came out, a lot of the Chamorro shelterees, after the storm was cleared, went right back home. It was the Micronesian who stayed around to see what they can get out of it. But those people the Chamorros that live in these lean-tos and tin housing and 2x4s and stuff like that, there's hundreds of them around the island. You drive around Estumbu, Talapopo, and Narahan, they're there. And if we can develop a program where we can let them help themselves by borrowing a little bit of money to buy better than 2x4s, pine 2x4s, maybe metal beams or something like that, they'd probably be able to stay in that home during the typhoon. But then again, we're not looking at a $200,000 investment. We just loan them small monies and low interest rates and let them help themselves. But we need to provide those kind of help for these people that they have jobs, but they just can't afford, concrete. See? So we need to get away from the expensive concrete and let them buy metal or something else that's strong, or find a way to finance a container home or something, because what I'm suggesting is 100% better than a lot of what those people are living in. A Estumbu is lined up with them, and we need to solve that problem too. and some of them won't be able to buy. That's why we're coming out with these alternate building system, because we think that if we made it affordable and provide a loan program that is low interest or no interest, we help them get off that. Or like you said, you continue the process of the next generation, again, the same lineup. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I see it at the end of the year when graduation occurs, and you see all these Micronesian kids who are now graduated from high school smarter, and hopefully that generation will take over because they can get jobs and help their parents who couldn't get jobs. So it's going to work its way. The first generation of immigrants are always like that, and we need to help them survive that period by providing them these different programs. And again, sorry to be the guy that keeps yelling, housing trust fund, but it is a solution. And we can manage that together with the legislature, because everything that is legislated out of those funds has to go through the legislature. So I ask you again to help us pass that, introduce it and pass it.
I just wanted to add something, and Mike can clarify if I'm wrong. We've been very appreciative because the governor's office has met with the Homeless Coalition several times, and he expanded the shelter beds at Guam San Jose. He has a member of his office that comes to our meetings every month, and she's been very, very helpful, Cecile Suda, and she's been helping us move things forward. So you're right, we really feel that in the past several years, there has been a lot of progress. One thing that we brought up before, though, was the Interagency Council, and I think that's key because, as you said, the people you list, I mean, we're just service providers. We're the low man on the totem pole, and we don't really have much power. So that Interagency Council, I don't know what year the executive order was made, and I don't know what year they last met, but it doesn't exist right now. But those are people like these gentlemen who really make the difference and can make the decisions. And so I know that there have been discussions about reviving the Interagency Council, and I think that would be a way to keep your mission and your goal moving forward in a comprehensive way.
Yeah, just based on the conversations, for me, I think that it actually goes beyond agencies. We need to bring in the contractors, we need to bring in the realtors and the insurance companies, because they are all in some way affecting this bottom line that is the cost of housing. And if we can get a consensus from both the agency side and the private sector side to come up with a comprehensive solution specifically targeted for child homelessness, going after the numbers specifically, 160, how do we solve this with the least amount of cost and the highest amount of volume? I think that if we bring all those players to the table and everybody's willing to put their chips forward, which I think they will be because we're talking about our kids, we're talking about homeless kids, we might be surprised. I mean, this whole conversation has been very eye-opening, and it's just our second one. What more when we have these additional players at the table and we see what they might be able to come up with in terms of solutions and then counter solutions that might get passed back and forth. So I'm gonna definitely focus on convening this new targeted group specifically for this key issue. But the Interagency Council, I think, would be very helpful in terms of pulling together agency responses and agency ancillary services for the homeless question in general. But I think we need to reach out into the private sector at this point also. So what we'll do is with our next roundtable, that will be our emphasis on those particular key groups, that they can begin putting it into their heads how they can bring to the table a solution for these in particular these children and the homeless families that they're a part of.
Senator, thank you for acknowledging Ms. Margaret's comments about the interagency agreement. I happen to take an interest, obviously, in attending the Guam Homeless Coalition meetings as well, and I happened to be there at one particular meeting where I really appreciated our friend from GMTA who attended as well, Mr. St. Augustine, and he really talked about a very fundamental challenge. Remember, I talked about how, okay, we got him in a home, what about the other peripherals, right? Transportation, obviously, is so necessary, and of course, Mr. St. Augustine was talking about, just how disempowered he was having those beautiful, and everybody's been driving by DPW, I'd hope, in the last several weeks and seen those beautiful, shuttles. They've got a purpose and they've got a plan for them. But the problem is, poor guy, for all intents and purposes, has no drivers for those vehicles, and they're not just any drivers. So I'm just kind of putting it out there. It's his to claim, but he obviously needs funding for that. I mean, he even volunteered one to the Veterans Administration Department of Veterans Affairs to obviously service our veterans who, again, also are part of this homeless issue, mind you, and then many of them with families. And so I just like to put that out there. Obviously, they're not just any drivers. He needs trained drivers that can deal with persons with disabilities, mental health conditions, and in particular, some of the nuances of, operating safely in those tertiary roads, not the primary, not even secondary. Sometimes those really off the beaten path roads. So I just, again, like to put that out there. So the interagency agreement or departments would also help that discussion, as you talked about, beyond that into the utilities. And again, I digress, but when I was talking about food earlier, I just wanted to challenge everybody or ask you. I had to take some insight, take some thoughts in, and one of them in particular was how even though we give a lot of our impoverished food stamps, how that is actually, at least in my home, I don't know about yours, the second highest cost next to my mortgage, next to rent, is food costs. And so cost of living, outside of just trying to stay in the home, trying to afford the vehicle, and whatever costs come with that, the cost of food. So, I mean, if there's a way we can, bring those issues to bear, I'm not sure the government's going to subsidize every single thing, but help people to be more self-sustainable. Plant in that little lot they've got, even on the terrace that they've got, so that their bills aren't overwhelming them, and of course making them succumb to, maybe addictive, workaholic-like things that otherwise don't spare the children, and in fact bring more ruin to the family. And so I appreciate Margaret's comments and of course your recognition of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Oh, and just to comment, Adonis, on what you shared, I don't disagree with you. Definitely we need to, there's a huge picture out there in terms of quality of life and cost of living. For me, I'm very single-minded in purpose. When I see 400 homeless kids, and they don't have a place. Yes, the transportation, yes, the food, all those things, they come into play. But in the end, how do we get a roof over their head? That's where I want to start. And then once we get there, we can begin addressing everything else, because one of the things that I found in my short lifetime is when you begin to try to address all the different variables that encompass a particular problem without tackling the ones that are most impactful immediately, then you begin to piecemeal into all the individual variables, and the comprehensive solution just never materializes, because the limited resources we have get spread out among all the different variables, and people are helped, but the problem isn't solved. And if we can chip away at each of the individual variables, from the biggest all the way down to everything else that's impacted, with the limited resources we have and the maximum impact that we can achieve with them, then that's when we will begin to see material and long-term sustainable change. So again, that's why I always keep bringing up this roof-first policy. We're homeless. Yes, we need transportation, we need less expensive food, lower-cost utilities, but we're homeless. Let's get the roof up, and let's find out what that's going to require.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. It was wonderful sitting back there and listening to all the great input. But like you said, what are the next steps? I think we all have to be visionaries now and look to the future. I just wanted to share a best practice. I have a good friend, Dr. Karen Corson. She was the epidemiologist for the Navy. Her parents have a nonprofit called CFAT, S-I-F-A-T, Servants in Faith and Technology. And they go into third world countries, the families with the lean-tos. They go on the basis that you teach them, give a man a fish for the day, he'll eat for the day. Teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And so they'll go and they'll build a tilapia pond, say, for the family and the lean-to. And they thrive, and so they have food all the time. They went in and they built a daycare center. They went to where there was a the trash dump, and moms were tying their kids to their lean-tos in the heat or the rain, and they would go scrounge and scour for food. And so they built a daycare, had the kids in daycare, taught the moms how to make things from the earth, and they sold it. You know, our families could make marmars or whatever it is, the flowers, go out and pick it. But I think we can have a vision to have people do meaningful work, and they would feed the kids for that one good meal of the day, and just think up things that we can do for families once we get a roof over their head, like what you said. And let's have a vision. Let's work together as a community. We have so much resources, and I think look at best practices, what's happening around the world, and don't think within our our little box. Let's look to the world and find solutions.
Very much agree with you. I'm a big believer that government's role is to provide basic services.
Yes.
And the real creativity and the visionary stuff is going to come from the agency and the organizations that, just have remarkable people who donate their time or who work for far less than they could probably get in the private sector just because they want to put those visions to work for the world. So absolutely, I very much agree with you. This homeless problem, I really think that Guam can be an example for the nation as a microcosm of what we can do when we begin to target solutions with a clear understanding of not only what the best practices might be, but with the understanding of what the limitations are with respect to the particular organizations. Like a nonprofit organization may not be able to build a homeless shelter, but they're going to be far better at getting families to figure out how to not fall back into the poverty life cycle than the government ever will be. So that's I think how we're going to be able to solve this on a big picture level, as Adonis was talking about. From a government perspective, it's the roof. It's a basic service. It's the transportation eventually, and putting all those pieces together. So I very much agree with everything that you had to say.
Thank you.
Senator Underwood, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add in the conversation at this time?
I would just like to remind. Just a reminder, so nobody forgets, is Guma San Jose does incredible work, but they're limited. My program is not an emergency shelter. We do help with housing, but there is that window sometimes when there's no space available. And then we have the families at the park, or we have them on the beach. And so I just want, in case you forgot, I just want to write it down. Even a little bit of money could go a long way. And just think of the preventiveness if you're keeping somebody from potentially being sexually assaulted because they're homeless and they're out at the park and they're a female with small children, or even a male. We've had issues just about, proactive. But yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
I wrote it right down here.
Okay. Thanks.
5 working days for a bridge sheltering program. This is the minimum time needed for agencies to properly place families.
Well, not properly. I'll end up with an ulcer, but yes, we'll definitely get it done.
All right. I wrote it down. Anything else that anybody would like to add?
I just want to say that there's a lot of good work that's definitely taking place, good conversation. I know there's a lot around strengthening families and the protective factors. And I know that there are lots of wonderful services that are out there. And I'm so on board with community gardens as well. And I realize so much of this is long-term. I'm on board with the roof first. Let's move. Let's get the utilities people, the realtors, even the banks or the credit unions, whoever it takes. Let's make this happen. And I'm looking forward to the next meeting. And I guess there'll be an email sent around to give us those next upcoming dates. The formula, the sooner we meet, the better.
Okay, everybody good? And we have just enough time to be able to get to lunch. 12 o'clock. I thank everybody for their contributions here today. And I do agree, we're gonna be meeting a little bit more. We're getting a clearer picture. When we first realized that this was an issue, it's one of those things where you just your knee-jerk reaction, 400 homeless kids, what do we do? Let's sit down, The fog is starting to clear a little bit, and it's starting to become more apparent where everyone can fit their roles in, where the different service providers, public and private, need to begin understanding the bigger picture. And so we're gonna start walking on the right side of the road, I think, on this conversation going forward. So we'll definitely get a new meeting set up with these other players involved, and we'll let everybody know when that next one is going to be. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. We'll go ahead and adjourn this roundtable at 11:43 this morning. Thank you very much.
We're going from systematic to
You can put them in neighborhoods where people can get to your service.